been there's been something that I've been thinking a lot about this because obviously there's been this big cancellation attempt primarily against you and Tucker. Although by proxy, I guess I've been caught up in it a bit. Obviously, both you and Tucker. Well, Tucker was fired from Fox News. You were fired from the Daily Wire. Both went on to be much bigger after getting canned, and yet now there's this attempt again to cancel you, and we're all kind of wondering, like, from what? Like, what would you even cancel them from?
After getting fired from major networks, some voices in the media have gotten even bigger. Candace Owens, Dave Smith break down why the audience, not the corporations, now decide who survives and what it means for cancel culture.
And I just thought, I was very close friends with Joe Rogan when he was going through that major cancellation attempt in the 22 in the height of COVID insanity. I was the first one on his podcast after all that stuff really went down, and I was out doing shows with him. And I remember at the time having this feeling where all of them kind of hadn't admitted it yet. The corporate media hadn't admitted that Joe Rogan is the biggest thing in media. They did eventually after the 2024, but at the time it was like so weird because you're like, wait, Brian Stelter is trying to cancel Joe Rogan? Doesn't he know? And so anyway, as Mark Levin is openly calling for you and Tucker's cancellation, and Dinesh D'Souza, people like this are openly calling, it is just funny because you're like, objectively right now, you and Tucker are the two biggest conservative political commentators. This is just undeniable. And so their plan right now is we want to cancel number one and number two. This is just like, how do you even get away with doing that when the people have already told you they're on their side, not yours?
Right.
What's it been like for you to just kind of watch this?
Well, yesterday was a fantastic day. I mean, to get the email from Podscribe, number one podcast in the world. And of course, I am humbled by it truly because the audience is the reason. Like, this truly was a free market response. And to go back and find the people who worked day in and day out to ruin my life. It wasn't like they just wanted me gone from the Daily Wire.
Right here, she's explaining what real cancellation looks like, not just losing a job, but getting pushed out of speaking events and sponsorships. This is where the question becomes, how much power should gatekeepers still have when the audience can follow you anywhere?
Which they got, and they celebrated and effectively danced on my grave. It wasn't, they then were trying to get my speaking events canceled. They were the ones that put pressure on Charlie not to let me speak. And I said to him, dude, I got enough going on. Like, I don't want you to also just by proxy catch a flame because they want to cancel me. They got me banned from Australia. I had to cancel a tour, right? Simply because I didn't agree with Israel. That you would think that I harmed somebody by having a different opinion. And I think the reason why yesterday was such a win was precisely because they worked so hard and tried to destroy me, and we survived. That's where their true hatred and vitriol is coming from, is the fact that we survived a virtual assassination attempt, right? It's like we shouldn't have survived it, but given everything they did, and even the element of how they wanted me to be fired, like the element of surprise for Tucker to be fired. He's doing a show on a Tuesday, suddenly on a Wednesday, he doesn't get to say goodbye to his audiences. I really do believe even that was a part of their like sadistic effort to be like, you are no more. And so, yeah, it feels good. And I'm really happy to say all I did was commit to the truth, and I didn't allow peer pressure to come to something that's actually evil. Like, we're not even, it's like, do you agree that Palestinians should be genocided? No. Okay, well then you're going to be canceled. You're never going to be on a Republican stage ever again. Okay, bye. I'll just do my own show. Okay, you're not going to be allowed to speak at the CPAC or the RNC. You're not going to get an invite to the White House. Okay, bye. I'd like to keep my morals and my principles in line. If I never get to go to Mar-a-Lago again, at least I can lay my head in the pillow and know that I'm not cheering for children to die, irrespective of whether they're Palestinian or Israeli. I'm not going to root on children dying. And so I think also something that's important to remember, Dave, is these people do not believe in the free markets. That's the number one thing to remember. They want people to be artificially pushed out of the free markets so that they can say they're number one. They love a world where, like what happened back, what was it, in 2020, when people were getting knocked off of platforms left and right. Maybe it was earlier than that, actually. It was before Trump was president. They love that world where you're artificially kicking out the gateway pundit. You're not allowed to be on Facebook anymore. You're artificially kicking out Alex Jones. You're not allowed to have a platform. And then they go, we're number one. We are the number one most listened to conservative news podcaster. It's like, no, you're not. There's no market here, and that's
Right.
what they want right now. They want their markets to be restricted so that they can be number one again.
That's the core of this discussion. Is the new media space actually free market competition or just the same old hierarchy trying to rebuild itself online? Let me know if you think cancel culture is really collapsing or just evolving.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's right. And because in a way, if they make look, if the punishment, let's say like for whatever, like it was in the old guard where like if you canceled someone, that was it. There wasn't like another, they couldn't just go start their own podcast or something. Like when Bill O'Reilly got fired from Fox News, I mean, I guess he did go start a podcast, but even back then it was like, it just wasn't as big of a market. And also his audience was a lot older. They weren't getting into like the technology. So he goes from being a guy who's speaking to like 5 million people a night to being a guy who's speaking to like 80,000 people when he does a show.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, that sucks. And, you know, you could see where the pressure would be like, hey, look, are you sure you want to say this one thing that'll piss everybody off? Because then you lose the right to say all the other things that you also might think are important. And you make people make these calculations in their mind. But you going to number one, it's like, oh no, not only is there not a price to be paid, there's a reward in the market for people going like, oh yeah, she stood up for what was right. And as you talk, like when you get down to the specifics of it, what you're talking about is like, I mean, I don't know, me and you've been reading the news for 2 years on this. You're talking about what? Children being shot at as they desperately try to get food because they've been starving for like I'm sorry, the American right wing is still made up of a lot of Christians and a lot of people who are just like, what? No, they're decent people. They're not going to go along with this. And the thing is, like, they kind of never got presented the opportunity to hear from people who were going to make that argument. And you've been a part of this huge like test study of like, well, how would it work if there was actually a market? And yes, I think it's incredibly rewarding.
If you like calm, long-form debates instead of sound bites, subscribe to the Unfiltered Take. We keep breaking down how audiences, not algorithms, are changing the media power.